Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. Lots to talk about today related to some changes in our political climate, and we want to connect those to a lot of things that affect us, and that's housing, construction in many of our cities. A lot of challenges there in terms of moving things forward within projects, municipalities, codes, and all of that. Call upon an expert today. And she's a partner at Greenspoon, Marder, LLP. Carol Sigmond is our legal professional of the year. She joins us today. Hey, Carol, how you doing?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
Fantastic. And going to start out with the disclaimer. I don't do politics. I don't talk politics. But we have some obvious changes coming, or we feel there's a potential for that. When you apply those political changes to the construction arena with housing, what are your initial thoughts? Where do you think we're going? What do you think could be some of the changes in the next year or two?
There's a kind of a broad way to look at this, but let me start with the industry itself, and then we can talk about the labor markets and some other things.
Sure.
The industry as a whole has been concerned with the potential for the Trump tariff. Construction is a big leading indicator in this economy. If you want to sense when the economy is going down, construction workers are on the bench. If you think the economy is turning around, more and more of them are working. That is just a historic reality. It's a leading edge. And I'm not just talking in housing, I'm just talking in general. If the Trump tariffs come in and they are applied as was described in the campaign, it is conceivable that the cost of construction material will skyrocket. If that happens, it could have an impact across the board. And it could have a negative effect on the economy. And some of the people who have been talking about, what happens with the Trump tariffs and that sort of thing, that is one of the things they're concerned about, is the impact on pricing of materials for construction projects. Because while the Biden administration did nearshore and onshore some, there's still a great deal that's imported. So that's the first thing to think about.
And by the way, the first thing, Carol, that comes to my mind is challenges with supply chain like we had during the pandemic.
Yes, it would create some supply chain. It could disrupt the supply chain. That's the second problem. I mean, the first problem is it becomes too expensive. The second problem becomes availability and reliability of delivery. Those are related but different issues. I mean, it could be that the material is available because nobody's buying it, on the other because it's too expensive, or it could be that there are supply chain issues because the portions of the chain where people are going are being impacted. So people need to think about the tariffs both as a supply chain issue and as just a recession issue. The second thing to think about is the labor shortage and what happens with deportation. Construction, I've said this many times. I'm not sure I've ever said it to you, but I've said it many times. There are very few skills in this world, job skills, that are more transferable worldwide than construction skills. Driving cars, yes, but driving construction equipment, sand, water, plumbing, piping, digging, it's a very highly transferable skill. So many people come here and work in the construction industry, whether they're documented or not. And we saw a large impact on the labor market following COVID when many people left. And if there is a kind of activity on the immigration front that's being described, we could see that as an issue as well, the labor shortage. I don't know how that plays out either. One of the things I don't have a good feel for right now is to what extent this current wave of immigration has penetrated the construction industry.
Right.
the Biden administration was not giving work permits. And I believe part of the reason they were doing that was to maintain wages for domestic, U.S. citizens and legal immigrants. They did not want the wages undercut. And I think that was part of the, if you will, Bidenomics. And so it may not be as high a penetration, say, in 2024 or 2025 as it was, say, in 19 or 18, when the penetration was much higher before COVID. So I don't know the extent, but I think you will see a labor shortage and therefore, again, prices going up and the industry being impacted.
It's hard to tell what's going to happen.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Can't predict.
Well, we do have, some direction. If you look at it as an analogy of driving, we have a couple of roads we think we might take to get there, but we're not sure what's going to happen there. Is there a time in history that you may think back and liken what you think is going to happen from the past situations, past administrations? Anything resonate with you?
The thing that resonates the most with me actually is the oil crisis of the I guess it's the early 70s.
Wow.
Gas.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I'm going to say, no, Carol, I don't remember that at all. I'm not that old. Yes.
Okay. Hey, come on, Steve. Let's be real here.
Odd and even numbers on your plate at the pump. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had that kind of a disruption. It affected the pricing of oil. It affected availability. It affected people's ability to get to work.
Sure.
It was a big market dislocation. This is the second one would be, in effect, the shutdown from COVID, but that was not. There was a national shutdown, sort of, but there were many states in the South and West where people weren't as densely packed in as we are in the East, and the virus wasn't transmitting as fast. But for people in the more densely populated coastal regions, it's going to be a little bit of the kind of disruption we saw with COVID, but it won't be because we're staying home. It will be because of commodity shortages or labor shortages or whatever.
Right.
So those are two things to think about. Although I think the oil crisis is probably a better example because it was more nationally impactful, and it disrupted the markets in a very meaningful way.
And more widespread than, let's say, the pandemic might have been, because some states...
In some respects, yes.
Right. How about clean energy initiatives? There's been talk about making changes within energy, how I would have to assume construction is done moving forward under those guidelines, and some of them takes time to roll out. But any initial thoughts on that?
Well, the Biden administration made a big investment in clean energy infrastructure. So, again, probably not well publicized or even that well understood by members of the public, but the Biden administration was seriously going about building up our infrastructure for clean energy, so reusables like solar, wind to a lesser degree. We can have a whole discussion about wind energy and whether or not it's that effective, but solar, it can be effective, at least to a degree. And
you know what? You're there, so let's hit the pause button there.
Dive. You want to dive a little?
Jump on in there, because right away, as soon as you talked about wind energy, and then I think about we're both in the New York area. All the wind farms and all of that, and it seemed 20 years ago, wow, this is the way to go. It never really seemed like it took off, and I don't know why. Any thoughts?
Yeah, one big one. So bear with me. I'm going to do a minute of technical.
Sure.
So clean energy, solar and wind, generally is direct current.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it's created as a direct current. Just think about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It gets collected and then converted to alternate current.
Yep.
But it has to be in a certain resonance, almost like vibration, in order to go into the grid. Solar has proven to be easier to manage the resonance on. So it has been easier to develop collectors and converters that will collect the energy, convert it, and take it into the grid in a resonance that the grid can take. Wind has proven to be more difficult. And there is a thing called subsonic resonance, which affects wind farms. The computers, there are efforts to use computers to try to manage this resonance issue, but it's not always been effective. So wind has been a little less predictable. Mostly if you install the solar correctly, you use the right collectors and converters, and you will hear people in the industry sometimes tell you not to buy certain brands or to buy other brands. And I don't want to endorse anything, so I don't want to use any product names. But, there are some brands that are very well known in the solar area for being very reliable in the collection and conversion area.
Gotcha.
So, and if you lay the cable exactly correctly and you do all your ties exactly right, you're going to likely get a pretty good result. Yeah, you might have to tweak it, but you're likely to get a pretty good result.
And thank you for the tech side of that, because I wasn't aware, honestly, and I'm kind of geeky, that there was conversion needed for wind. And, of course, alternating current coming out of your wall has a certain frequency, 60 hertz. I don't know what it needs to be at to go into the grid, but there's conversion involved. So I wasn't aware that solar was much more effective in that.
Solar has been a little more reliable, at least in my experience. And remember, what I see are the disasters. I don't see the successful projects. I only see the ones with problems.
Interesting that you put it that way. So we're looking at the worst case scenario many times here, which you need to be aware of.
Yeah, it's. I mean, but there are massive projects all over the country. There's huge solar farms being built in many parts of the country. Maryland has several large ones, and they're coming online. They're not. I don't know that we're ever going back to as much oil dependency as we have now. And I mean, the less dependent we are on oil, the less we need the sea lanes, sea lanes of trade to the Middle East to carry oil. We still need the slots to Europe, and we still need the slots to Asia, but maybe we don't need the Middle East as much. Mm-hmm. And certainly we don't want to see any Americans dying in the Middle East.
So I preface this by saying that I don't get into politics. I am going to report what was reported, but during the campaign, putting construction workers back to work was one of the things that actually both candidates were pushing for. USA Today, again, I'm just reporting, has reported within the last few days that Trump refused to pay hundreds of contractors, from carpenters to painters to even his own lawyers. And his companies face 60 or more lawsuits as well as liens and judgments. What do you think the message is there? Not paying hundreds of contractors. And I know we don't do politics, but
we don't do politics. Let me put it this way: the Trump organization, up until Trump Tower, which was, basically straw bossed by Barbara Ress, I think people by and large got paid on that job. A lot of the jobs down in South New Jersey at Atlantic City, they did not get paid on. There are other ones where they did not get paid. There are many lawyers that did not get paid. Many subcontractors did not get paid. He's not by any means the only real estate developer that ever did that. He's not by any means the only developer that didn't pay all of his construction debt. It's a tough business. It's a very tough business with a lot of tough people in it.
From your viewpoint, in terms of what you deal with as a partner in a firm and it specializes in construction and litigation, does that come up a lot where people aren't getting paid?
It can be an issue. New York, California, South Carolina, a number of states have taken steps to protect workers in these situations and to try to ensure that wages are paid to workers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been intense efforts in many states, and I think it's gotten a little better, particularly for documented workers, U.S. nationals, people with green cards and working papers. I think they do a little better, and their wages have been better. The weakening of the unions over time has hurt some of those wage efforts, but as I say, the state laws have stepped in to try to protect them, and to a degree, the federal government has as well. It's whenever you have large numbers of undocumented workers, you have people who are vulnerable to not being paid wages and being afraid to report that. Most states, certainly New York and California, if you are an undocumented worker and you're working in construction and you are not getting paid, you will not be deported, at least not by the states will not be reporting you for deportation for reporting that. They want wages paid to workers.
What about the union situation? Any thoughts there with the new administration coming in with looking through it of the lens of construction?
The construction unions are interesting. And in the interest of full disclosure, let me say that I sit on certain plans for 1010, Local 1010, which is a Leona local, Laborers International. By and large, I think the laborers are in fairly good shape. The apprenticeships are growing. The union contractors have been busy. The wages have been getting paid to the workers. The workers who are fortunate enough to be on union projects generally do fairly well. They also do fairly well with big, well-established non-union developers and construction managers. It's the smaller companies, the smaller projects that have been a little bit trickier. I don't know what will happen with the construction union.
How about looking at Trump's last run in the White House compared to what's facing us now? Do you think it's very similar?
I don't know, because I don't know what's going to be with the tariffs. That's a hard question.
So, yeah, and you know what? Thank you for saying that, because that seems to be a strong point here, and that does affect most of construction in terms of right down to equipment.
Yep.
Yeah, that's I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said all true.
Yeah. Wow. Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being major concern, where would you be sitting right now based on the information that we have?
Oh, that's interesting, too. I believe that Trump is sincere about two things. One, he believes in tariffs, and two, he does believe in, this deportation strategy that he's developing. If he's careful, maybe it won't be that disruptive. And some of that is going to depend on, who talks to him and what kind of advice he gets on some of it. And I can't begin to speculate what that might be.
Well, one thing's for sure, and I'm going by memory here in what I've read, but the society that most civil engineers belong to estimate that we will have a big situation, lots of jobs lost, lots of product, all of that, if we can't overcome I think it's almost a $1.5 trillion deficit in infrastructure funding. Trump did say that he's got a plan for that. It's at least $1 trillion in the infrastructure. What do I mean by infrastructure? Public transportation. The bridges in this country are structurally deficient. A lot of issues there.
Oh, yeah.
As we saw.
Bridges are terrible. Yeah, bridges are terrible.
Especially in the past year. What happened when a bridge was struck? Okay, it was hit by a vessel, but at the same time, look what happened. Maybe if that bridge was in better condition, the damage wouldn't have been as such. Lots to consider here. Always appreciate your input. I love the fact, Carol, that you're plugged in. I'll throw you a question. you've got some insight, whether it's a lot of it is factual, a little, some opinion as well. And I appreciate that all. Tell everybody if, they have a need for litigation involving construction, how do they find you?
Oh, my email.
Okay. What's
Carol, Carol, .Sigmond, Sigmond, @gmlaw.com. I answer all my emails.
And the firm is Greenspoon, Marder, LLP. Always a pleasure having you on here. Really appreciate it, Carol.
Thanks a million, Steve. Be well.
You too. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Okay, Simon, what are you wearing right now?
Nothing.
That's right. And what do people normally wear?
Clothes.
Exactly. So now Mommy's going to teach you how to dress yourself. Clothes keep us warm, they look good, and if we go out without them, the neighbors will talk. So it's important to know how to get dressed. Here's how it's done. Underwear always comes first, name tag at the back, then pants, then shirt. Get the first button in the right hole, or you have to start all over. If you're wearing a tie, it goes over, round, through, and pull tight. Tuck your shirt into your pants and zip up your fly. Socks going first, then shoes right on right, left on left. With shoelaces, just take the ends, cross them over, switch the loops. The rabbit goes down the hole, pull tight, and you're left with bunny ears.
I love bunnies.
Good to know. Now remember, spots don't go with stripes, socks don't go with sandals, and if you've tucked in your shirt, wear a belt. Got it? Why are your pants on your head?
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But spending just 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush their teeth is easier and could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain. For fun 2-minute videos to watch while brushing, visit 2min2x.org. That's 2min2x.org. A message from the Partnership for Healthy Mouths, Healthy Lives, and the Ad Council.